It's just past 9:30 a.m. here in Singapore. You're watching Asia First.
And here are the headlines we are following. Nepal's government lifts a sweeping social media ban after it sparked clashes between protesters and police, leaving at least 19 people dead. The demonstrations, among the most widespread in the country's recent history, and also fueled by anger over high-profile corruption cases.
A cabinet reshuffle in Indonesia impacting 5 portfolios days after violent protests and looting of lawmakers' homes. Purbaya Yudi Sadewa replaces veteran Sri Mulyani Indrawati as finance minister. He is vowing to address public discontent and social unrest through stronger economic growth.
We're also tracking a court ruling that could open up former Thai Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra to a new prison sentence. Judges are expected to decide whether his 6-month hospital stay after returning from self-exile undermined the enforcement of a jail term.
And French Prime Minister François Bayrou loses a confidence vote in Parliament hours after warning the country faces life-threatening debt. The loss deepening a political crisis facing President Emmanuel Macron, who has to find a 5th person to take up the job in less than 2 years. But first.
Right, Teresa. So we've been seeing a growing trend across Asia, from the Philippines to Nepal and Indonesia. This growing trend of where social media is either amplifying public anger against political elites or becoming a target itself.
Yeah, exactly. The ban on social media sites sparked mass protests yesterday in Nepal. The government says, it wants to prevent misuse, and it even brought in a bill. But critics, they don't buy it. They are calling it a tool for censorship.
Yeah, reports say that it's since been rolled back, but many commentators are saying this wasn't just about social media. It's really about a mounting anger and frustration over corruption, inequality, and deep economic hardship.
Yeah, and these protesters we're talking about, Julie, many of them, they're quite young. They're in their 20s, some even younger. Some were in their school or college uniforms as well. And they were carrying placards with slogans such as "Youths Against Corruption."
Yeah, we've also been hearing chants of them outside the parliament shouting that, stop corruption, not social media. And a message that clearly resonating not only in the streets, Teresa, but also into a digital world. I'm not sure if you've actually seen, but TikTok was just flooded and inundated with viral videos just comparing the very dire and tough lives of ordinary Nepalis with clips of politicians' children. They're flaunting their luxurious lifestyle, from supercars to expensive, vacations and head-to-toe designer brands.
Yeah, and we are seeing similar social media backlash over in the Philippines as well. Criticism of political families' opulence. It's gone viral among young Filipinos on TikTok and other platforms too. The focus here was also on the display of wealth by the political elite and contrasting them with those financial struggles that so many of the population face.
Yeah, and just this week, it was, I believe it was yesterday, to be exact, high-profile contractors came forward. They're accusing at least 17 lawmakers of demanding kickbacks as much as 25% of the costs on a government flood control projects.
Yeah, and if we look at Indonesia, the wave of violent protests that swept across that country late last month, it was triggered by perks to lawmakers. That allowance that was introduced last year was nearly 10 times the minimum wage in Jakarta. The perks, though, they've been rolled back and things have calmed down for now. Now, authorities, though, they've arrested activists and netizens for posting content on social media that the police allege incited a string of protests and riots in Jakarta, in the capital, and other parts of the country, too.
Indeed, Teresa. So whether it's online or offline on the streets, the young people across the region are making their voices heard, and social media is their loudspeaker. Let's speak now to Dr. Nuriyanti Jalil. She's an assistant professor of professional practice at the School of Media and Strategic Communications at Oklahoma State University. Professor, thank you very much for joining us. So how are you reading this current wave of activism and anger? And what feels different compared to past moments of discontent?
I mean, this past few weeks, we've seen a lot of different movements across different countries in Asia, how young people using social media actively to highlight corruptions in the respective countries. And it has been overwhelming on my end to follow everything. But I feel that the changes in terms of like how exactly the government respond to this movements, to this discontentment by young people is really, interesting to observe.
Yeah, this has been your area of study for quite some time, and I'm curious to know, why is the rise of grassroots activism on social media platforms particularly significant in this part of the world? What is it about Southeast Asia that allows platforms like TikTok to thrive here?
I mean, one of the main reasons for this platform, such as TikTok, such as like X, Facebook, flourish in our part of the world, due to the fact that historically our media institution has been governed by the state and by political powers. So, having social media providing that freer space for people to share their opinions, be it about social life, be it about political issues, that kind of like give them that freedom to share their opinions more actively in contrast to before. So that's why we could see that, over the years, we've seen a lot of like online protests organized through platforms such as TikTok, and that move on from online to offline, where we see like street protests, and that sometimes and most of the time, I believe, led to sad tragedies. We're talking about like recent life loss in Nepal. 19 people died because of like social unrest due to discontentment toward the government due to corruption. And in Indonesia, we saw the same thing.
If you could just highlight your study on TikTok, I understand you called it a creative platform for activism, but issues like corruption, for example, are often complex and systemic. So how effective are platforms like TikTok as a tool for resistance, and how far can they really go in terms of transforming outrage into real pressure for reform?
I mean, social media is just a tool. It's something that we have to understand. It's a tool for people to express their opinions, right? And the more people use it, the more that we use it strategically to highlight issues that we have within our country, it can help and can pressure the government to take actions. We're talking about like in Indonesia, say, for example, the public anger over the lawmakers' housing perks led to President Prabowo to suspend overseas trips for MPs and even fire two key ministers. And in Nepal, the protests, led to lifted of like social media ban recently by the Ministry of Communication and Information. And in the Philippines, we've seen that a few ministers were made accountable for the scandal. So social media helps to push and put things in, under the highlight, I guess, right, under microscope, so that people are kind of like collectively coming in and give more pressure towards the government to act on these issues. So we're talking about like I found the case with the Philippines the most interesting due to the fact that we're talking about highlighting Nepo babies on TikTok and how that led to these Nepo babies to delete and even privatize their account. And that can, that kind of like highlights how exactly people, when they use social media effectively without like government, what we call it, strong control over it, can lead to change. But however, the change is, this is something that for us to ponder, whether or not the change is going to be something sustainable or the government acting on reactively because of the public sentiment. It's something for us to think about. So I feel like in Asia right now, in Southeast Asia specifically, the way that we work, sadly, for government is we're reacting to issues, but we're not really thinking about to making sustainable change. Like, say, for example, in Indonesia, we can, reform anti-graft policies, say, for example, to address corruption issues. In the Philippines, similarly. But right now we're seeing like more reactive, what we call it, reaction from government, short-term solutions, I would say.
Yeah, and that leads to my next question. A strength and a weakness of TikTok is the virality of it, and how a story, it's big one day, it's gone the other. How can activists connect this online activism with offline action? And you talk about that sustained movement. How do we make sure that these movements aren't at the mercy of the algorithm?
I think one of the key things that we have to understand, I love the fact that you were saying the algorithm can influence what we see, right? And we are, sadly, it's the reality. What we see is under the influence of algorithm, a social media algorithm, and algorithm like such as TikTok, based on engagement. So I feel one of the ways that we can make movement sustainable is to have this movement, the conversation about political issue taken out of social media. We have to organize offline gatherings. We have to organize like offline active public discourse, so that that can reduce the influence of social media business model onto the movement, and secondly, and can help with pushing away government's influence over regulation on the platform. So we've seen in Indonesia, say for example, during the protest, TikTok Live was banned for a while. Due to the fact that it was allegedly led to misinformation. But then again, we can see from that example in Nepal as well, that example alone, that how social media platform can easily pressured by government to stop this movement from moving. So in order for us to kind of like make our movement more sustainable is to encourage people to have that conversation beyond social media. Social media is a tool, but we also need to have that conversation outside of social media.
Very interesting conversation. Thank you so much for your time today. We've been speaking to Dr. Nuriyanti Jali, Assistant Professor of Professional Practice, School of Media and Strategic Communications at Oklahoma State University.
So we'll be checking the China